Hey guys, welcome to Mada Mada Des, which is Japanese for a long way to go. My name is Wyatt and I am a missionary heading to Japan. A big part about preparing to go into the mission field is talking to other missionaries and learning from their experience and just learning a lot about what they went through, and that kind of helps me understand what to expect when I get there. Today we're here with my friend Alex. How you doing, Alex?
Doing great.
Yeah, and he's just going to share with us a little bit about what he did in Papua New Guinea. So first, why don't you start me off with what got you into missions in the first place?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on your show. A little bit about me first. So my wife Trish and I, and we have two kids, recently got back from serving overseas. So we're no longer serving overseas as missionaries, but over the past couple of years has been we moved back to the States and trying to figure out life post serving overseas. But what got us into missions and serving overseas is, well, for Trish, my wife, she always wanted to be a missionary ever since she was a little kid. She was blessed to have a church that had a lot of missionaries come through and tell really cool stories. And yeah, from a young age, she was determined and ready and excited about serving in Turkey. For some reason, you'll have to ask her why, but yeah, she was really excited about that. And she has a really cool story if you ask her about her journey from a child wanting to serve as a missionary to the point where she is now, or where she was when she was serving overseas. But for me, that wasn't the case at all. I was a little rascal when she was wanting to be a missionary and far from Jesus. It wasn't until I was in high school when I started following Jesus, and I went on a couple of short-term mission trips, and I got kind of excited about, oh, cool, this is exciting, this is adventurous, I want to do that. But not right away. Like, I have a plan to serve in the military first, and I didn't really know what there was to do serving overseas. Like, I thought it was just you're evangelizing people in a different country. So I went on my route, and this is kind of a big part of my story, like what's my plan versus God's plan for my life. And when I was in college, I was on my plan and I had zero peace about it. I mean, I've been training my whole life to do military stuff, and I was in engineering, and I thought that was what God wanted me to do, but I had no peace. And it wasn't until a good friend of mine at church came up to me and was like, hey, this is out of the blue. He had no idea what I was going through. I was in turmoil because my life was falling apart. I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. He's like, hey, have you checked out Mission Aviation? Just check it out. And he walked away. It was a really quick conversation. And I was like, that's weird. Okay. And I remembered it, and I looked it up, and I had an immediate peace. It had to have been from God. I was like, that is totally what God wants me to do. And I had zero experience with airplanes besides like, ooh, look, airplane, which I still do. Airplanes are cool. But I didn't know really what missionaries doing aviation stuff, like what they did day to day or what it looked like, but I knew that's what God wanted me to do. So I transferred schools. I went to a school in Washington State that trained specifically for this. So there was a year of Bible, there's 2 years of maintenance on airplanes. So I got my certificates for that. And then the flying was like, it was a normal flight school, but they were very specific about bush flying and like flying in unimproved airstrips. And they did a really good job. So with the expectation for flying overseas and servicing your own airplane. And so I, in that time, Trish and I started dating. We got married halfway through, and we both lived over there. After a very long time of school, it was a 5-year program, taking a year off, and that was a year after I transitioned, so it was a lot of schooling. We moved back to Iowa, and we paid off debt, And like our goal was always to serve overseas, but we were getting comfortable. And we were like, okay, if our friends are getting dogs and have like getting cool houses and stuff and motorcycles, and if we're gonna go overseas, we can't get too comfortable. So we better join an organization. So at that point, we decided, like, okay, our debt's paid. Let's go. Let's do this thing. So that's how we got into aviation or into missions.
That's awesome. That's awesome to see how like just God was pointing you in that direction.
Yeah, and with my journey, like what I wanted to do, it was like I was fighting a current, that I was swimming against this river. And once I finally gave up what I thought I wanted to do or what I thought God wanted me to do and kind of gave in to where God was pushing me very clearly, it was like I lifted up my feet in the river and it just took me, and I was at peace like a river. But seriously, I knew that God was going to provide for me, and He did, for years and years and years, continues to. It's still difficult, but it's part of my journey of letting go of what I want and releasing it to God in His sovereignty and trusting Him.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about where you guys went and what you were doing while you were over there?
Sure. Well, we signed up for this organization, and they kind of pitched where they serve and all the different like types of ministry that they do with the airplane in different countries. And they did that so that we could have the option to choose if we felt like God was leading us one place or another. And really, we were just totally up for going wherever the biggest need was. They told us, hey, we think a good fit for you will be Indonesia. And I was like, cool, that's kind of the one that I wanted, because it seemed the most adventurous. It seemed like the hardest flying and just interesting in general. And we left from that meeting and we're excited. We're like, okay, this is our new place we're gonna live. Where's Indonesia? So I had to Google it, and Google didn't even know what I was trying to spell. They didn't even say like, do you mean this? So I found out all about Indonesia, being in Southeast Asia. We had to go through all the fundraising stuff, and there was more training that I had to do, being a technical occupation ministry there with flying and maintenance. There was a lot of training, standardization that we had to do. Fundraising took about 10 months. We were done with all that. Our next step was going to language school, and that was 10 months of language school. At the time, we had our firstborn, he was 18 months, moving over there. And then by the end of the language school, our second was born. So he was born in Jakarta down there. We finally got to Papua. And at that point, it was almost 10 years of training and preparing in order to get to where we were. So we were in our new home of Papua, and we were really excited. And Papua is a beautiful place. It's crazy. The climate and the geography is just, it's like Jurassic Park. It's really cool, but just gnarly. It goes from sea level to 16,000 feet in like less than 30 miles. So all kinds of crazy weather patterns happen. It's difficult flying. So there's like the spine of the island, there's a big mountain range, and a lot of people live there, but a lot of people live in the lowlands too. There isn't any roads to get around. So it creates a problem of isolation. And, we might feel isolated at times. In COVID, a lot of people threw that word out. They felt isolated from communities and doing different things. Isolation there is a lot different. They're physically isolated from a lot of different people. It's very isolated to all the different peoples out there. So isolated, in fact, that there could be a village on one side of the mountain, and then down the valley up the other side of the mountain, not very far away, there's another people group with an entirely different language, different culture. They might look the same, they might act the same from outside perspective, but totally different language, not even dialect. And so you said before, I have to correct you. I'm sorry, just because you're a friend. All right. I actually went to Papua, Indonesia, so it's different than Papua New Guinea.
Oh, whoops, I'm sorry.
No, this is a good PSA for all of our friends out there. PNG or Papua New Guinea is a totally different country that was colonized by a different people, and Papua is part of Indonesia. So it's the same island of New Guinea, but it's just Papua. So we were on the Papua side, the Indonesian side of Papua, and the whole island is similar from an outside perspective. But just my side, I'm just going to talk about my side here, the Indonesian side. It's not mine. There are 300 almost 300 different languages, distinct languages, not including dialects and all that stuff. So isolation is a real thing, and it's a problem for a lot of reasons that we probably wouldn't think of being Westerners in a comfortable society where things are easy. It's not easy out there. If you're sick, there probably isn't a clinic or a hospital anywhere nearby, and you die from simple issues. There's a lot of disease, but you could die from something as simple as diarrhea, because also there isn't education in a lot of these places. So they don't know that if their infant has diarrhea, you don't stop feeding it water. You have to continue feeding the child water. And simple stuff like that. There's a lot of death, a lot of infant mortality out there. So there's a lack of school, there's a lack of health care. And so that's the physical isolation. But there's a huge spiritual isolation too. It's very spiritually dark. I mean, it can be spiritually dark all over the place, but there in particular, it's just with the other isolation going on and the type of people that are there, it's just very spiritually dark in a lot of places. This is where aviation comes in. Our organization, the ministry, was to use an airplane as a tool. That's it. I mean, airplanes are really cool, but it's a tool so that we can bridge that isolation gap so that people can be transformed both physically and spiritually. So if there is a sick person who needs medevac, I can go in and pick them up, fly them to a place where there is a doctor, where there's a hospital. I can fly in doctors or dentists or nurses for that's the healthcare. I mean, or just bring in supplies. A lot of the missionaries that are out there are really good with treating simple issues. So we bring medicine out. We bring in teachers and supplies, and that's bringing people out. But it's also like the people live there and they need to get to somewhere else. Some of these places are so isolated it would take weeks or months to get to a town, and that's through climbing through dense, crazy jungles where there's a good chance that you'll catch some sort of disease or sickness, or going through this river that has alligators or crocodiles. I don't know the difference, but there's like something that will eat you if you fall in, and rapids that will suck you under. And I've heard of it where villagers try to go into town and they would die in the process, and it would take months. A 30-minute flight would save months of travel time, and you get back safely, and you're not sick and hurt or whatever, worn out. So you're serving the people too, and then the spiritual aspect. You need to get missionaries to these places, and back in the day, missionaries would pack their stuff in their coffin because they would take a boat ride. It would take months to get to wherever they were going, and they weren't planning on coming back unless it was in a coffin. So there weren't as many missionaries back then because people weren't bold enough to do stuff like that. But now with airplanes, you can get into a tribe and you can do like short-term trips to these places that were unheard of going to, besides a guy exploring, where he would spend months exploring new places. And that's what Papua was like. So being able to bring missionaries and serving them, doing all the different things that they're doing out there, a lot of it's translation, being that there's 300 distinct languages. we get to serve those guys doing that. And the airplane saves decades off of their work. I mean, it's a long process what they do. They can't just go in and say, hey, have you heard about Jesus in the first 5 minutes of meeting? It's a big process. They have to learn the language. They have to learn the culture. They have to, like, they'll never be one of the people, but they need to get the respect from them and live for like 10 years sometimes before they're able to share the gospel. And that you don't just share the gospel right away, because there's a problem of them just saying, okay, that's a cool God, we're going to put that in with our other gods. No, you have to start from the beginning. The story of God creating us, and sin enters, and all these different people trying to fix or fill the void of sin and how that separates us from God. But no, God sends His Son, and we're redeemed through Him and His life and death and resurrection. And it takes months to go through that story, and it's crazy, because when they get it, they're on fire. And we were able to be a part of that by serving them with the airplane.
So that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. What was the most amazing thing that you saw God do while you were there?
So that's a hard question, because our family was only over there for about 7 years, but so many things happened while we were over there. Just from the aviation ministry perspective, I'll split it into two group categories. So one was the physical, like caring for the physical needs of people, and what I saw, how God used the airplane. It was amazing. Like, I've seen kids with broken femurs who probably would have been crippled or died if we weren't able to pick them up. It was all emergency stuff. I saw all sorts of battle wounds, like from arrows or machetes, people bleeding out from botched births, anything and everything, diseases. And God was able to use this airplane, and He is like so many different stories of how He orchestrated the weather not closing in, or me being around that area to be able to go in and pick them up, or anyone out there serving. It's not just me, obviously, but what I was able and had the opportunity to experience, it was just amazing. And the people would come around, and a lot of the places would pray over the person, and they were just praising God that there was an airplane available that was able to pick him up. The weather wasn't bad, that they were going to get the care for that they needed. And it was just really cool, all the different stories that obviously being very generic about in this interview, how God was able to use the airplane and just serve for people's physical needs, because, ultimately their soul is what's important, right, for eternity. But like Jesus said that I will give you life, and give you life in abundance. And that means now too, right? And just to be able to help people who are sick get healed. And Jesus did that in His ministry, right? He was able to heal people. And I'm not comparing myself to Jesus. I'm not. But I think if Jesus was around, He would probably fly an airplane. Just kidding. Just kidding. So it was really cool to see how he used the airplane to help for people's physical needs. So the spiritual needs, I kind of talked about how we were able to serve missionaries out there. But, I was alluding to earlier how Papua is a very dark place in areas. And I was able to go to a lot of different villages. I served a lot of villages, and, I'd land in one, and it's very clear that place is spiritually dark. And I could tell that there was a darkness, there was a heaviness. I could see it in their eyes, and it was just sad. It was hard, harsh living in environments. And, honestly, when it was 120 degrees, 100% humidity, and I had to unload a huge load of stuff from an airplane, and like I got angry too. It's a hard place to live. But spiritually absent, people not having the gospel, like it was just extra heavy. And then in comparison, I would go to a place where they heard the gospel and they accepted the gospel, and they were able to build up a local church and have local pastors and elders, and it was night and day different. And you could see it in their eyes, you could feel it in the air. There was true joy in the area, and that kind of transformation only comes from the gospel, right? It changes everything. And I've met and shaken hands with people who used to eat other people, and now these guys are trying to share the gospel to the other people group down the way who they not long ago used to eat. So there's another story of a guy whose life was totally transformed by the gospel as well. His name is Pendeta Saul, so Pastor Saul. And not all the places in Papua are safe. But what is safe? The safest place is to be in the center of God's will, right? So that wasn't an issue for us. So sometimes we had to go into these places that weren't exactly safe, and there was a situation that turned ugly, where there are some thugs basically with guns, and they were making mischief, and they had guns pointed at me, aimed, ready to shoot, and this guy, Pendeta Saul, ran immediately in between me and the guns that were pointed at me, and put his life on the line to save me. An outsider, someone who at one point early on before he started following Jesus, he would easily try to kill, not risk his life for. And thank God we're both fine. God worked in amazing ways during that story, but it'll have to be a different time sharing the rest of that. But we both got out, and it was just a really cool way to see how the gospel transformed specifically Pendeta Saul's life, to where he would sacrifice himself instead of murder like he would have in the past.
Kind of with that in mind, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to face while you were over there?
So there's a lot. There's a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh, life, adventure, that sounds awesome. I want to do that. But if anyone has been in an adventure, they know how uncomfortable and difficult it is, and how not fun it is sometimes. And moving to Papua was a big adventure. So there's a lot of hard things. And, I thought about this a while. You asked me this question, and, the 3 F's people say a lot. So friends, family, and food. Things also. So friends, family, food, and things. And it was really hard because we moved to a place that we had no idea what life was going to be like. And honestly, it was kind of like dying, because we gave almost all of our stuff away. We were leaving our family and friends, going to this place where we had no idea what it was like, and we were going to live there. And we thought indefinitely. So we thought that would be really hard. It really wasn't, because God provided. Our tastes changed. Like there's really good food over there. Not any good pizza, but I got over that. And we made new friends. And nowadays we can talk, using video chat almost whenever. And not too long ago, the internet wasn't good enough down there. So during our time there, the supermarkets got fridges, so we were able to get stuff like butter, and God provided in a lot of ways. So friends, family, food, and things weren't really that hard. It was isolated. We moved to a place where mission aviation was needed, so that's an isolated place. So that living with other missionaries, you've probably heard this before, living in close proximity to other missionaries can be really hard. And that was a very hard thing for us. And, but God redeemed that. And in fact, living close to some missionaries, like we grew really strong relationships with. So I guess what I'm like leaving the field was really hard because they became family to us. Our kids called them uncle and aunt, and we had to say goodbye to a lot of people who came and went, including when we left, we had to say goodbye to everyone, and that was really hard. It's dangerous flying a single engine airplane over isolated jungle. We had a friend who passed away in an airplane accident, and that was really hard for us. So, you grow really close to people and then having to say goodbye, it's hard. But even that probably wasn't the hardest thing because we learned that even if we don't see them again, we'll see them in heaven. And, that relationship isn't over forever. I think probably the hardest thing for me personally living overseas is how I slowly intertwined my identity as what I did over there. So I became as the missionary pilot. That was who I was. And what made it incredibly hard, looking back at my time over there, I can see how it was destructive thinking that way. If your identity is in something else that's not rooted in Christ, then what happens when that thing goes away? Like, I am no longer a missionary aviator. So what does that mean? It would be traumatic. It would be earth-shattering. And it was when I had to move, because I had to untangle that identity that I made as a missionary pilot, and I wasn't anymore. So, it's a really sneaky thing that can happen to people, and it can happen here too. Like, I am fill in the blank. If it's not first and foremost a child of God, then your priorities aren't straight. And when that thing fails, which it will, or it will go away, you'll be left lonely or distraught. You won't know what to do because that thing has failed. And everything will fail. Christ won't fail us. So that was the hardest thing, was when I was done, how do I untangle this identity that I wove in that wasn't real, wasn't in reality, and how do I get back into that I'm adopted, redeemed son of God, which has been a process and it will continue to be a process. And I think, everyone has to do that in a way, but that would be probably the hardest thing as a missionary serving overseas, now coming back, that I faced. Even more than not having pizza in Papua.
Well, and I bet that was a close second. So
Yeah. Let's be clear. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. So then if you were going to do this all over again, and you were preparing to go, what is one thing that you would want to make sure that you were doing?
That's another hard question. I look back and I failed a lot, but that's how we learn, right? We learn through our failures, especially guys like me who need to fail a lot sometimes to learn. And I failed a lot. So it's pretty difficult looking back to think like, oh, what's one thing? I could have, if I learned the language before, then it would free my brain space so I could do other things and not concentrate on that. Well, that maybe, but no, because what I was doing before was in preparation. Like, God is sovereign and He uses the whole journey. When I was preparing to go overseas, when I was training, God was, using the training, but He was also using life circumstances that I was in to prepare me for this or for something else. I don't know. So I can't say that I should have done something else instead of what I did, because I truly believe that God uses all of those things, especially the mundane things. You see that in Jesus' life. His really cool ministry opportunities was during the interruptions. When you would think, the disciples saw no, we're supposed to go over here. Don't pay attention to them. No, this is a moment that I need to use. So during some pretty difficult times for myself and Trish and the kids while we were overseas, there was a guy who suggested me to read this book called With by Skye Jethani. And that was just really very helpful for me then. But I think it's helpful for whatever life stage you're in, whatever you end up doing, because, if you follow Christ, it's a relationship. And it's not, I'm going to do this for God, which was my problem. I wanted to do all these things for God so that I could become like a means to an end, so I can become a super Christian or whatever. Like, I want to make God's name famous, but I want to do it because of what I'm doing. And, God can do that without me. He doesn't want us to do stuff under him, or he doesn't want to become a cosmic vending machine of like doing things so that you get something. He desires to be with us. And that was very powerful for me because I held the keys to the airplane. I felt like I was in control and it was all dependent on me doing these things for God. Ultimately wasn't. God is sovereign and he's good and he desires a personal relationship with us. So not for getting anything or to make yourself something that you're not, but a relationship with him. And that really helped me then. It helps me now because I still struggle with that to a different degree. And, it would have helped me before. It will help anyone who follows Jesus in any stage, whatever they're doing, to look at their life and situation in that way, because that's ultimately what God wants for us.
Amen.
Relationship with us.
Thank you for sharing that. That's I can see how that would be a pivotal step to want to take before you got to the field. So
it helps. It certainly helps.
Amen. Amen.
Another cool thing that God did through me specifically, like all the way going through school, the technical school, I am not naturally gifted at flying airplanes. It was very difficult for me. I failed a lot of flight tests, and I was able to get through miraculously. I am overseas, and God was able to use my abilities that weren't naturally that good to fly the airplane into really dangerous and hard airships. So we're talking really short, flat, slippery because it's there's trees on both ends and it's wet because it's 120% humidity out, it looks like we're going straight into a mountainside, but it's 25% slope, and you the last second you go up and then you land on this mountainside. And I was trained well by people who really knew what they were doing, but it took a lot of work for me and I wasn't naturally good at it, and it was really easy to give up. But God used that, I think, to do his will. I mean, he wanted us to go overseas and I was able to use that gift. But I think it's really easy for a lot of people to think, oh, I'm not that good at it, so I'm not gonna let the current take me that way because I'm not comfortable with that. But God can use untalented people like me, and he can do miracles to where I can actually fly an airplane. And sometimes I would land at an airstrip and my hands would be shaking, and I'm like, I'm not scared, but that was a lot. That took a lot of mental effort to do this approach because it's just different than flying over here. And like this rock, you have to be at this altitude and you come in and then you have to commit to landing by this point and you have to land. Otherwise, if you go around, you're going to crash. So you have to land, and the winds can only be plus or minus 1 knot. And it was intense, but I went through a good school and they trained me well. And again, the safest place that you can be is in the center of God's will. So I want to say that if anyone is uncomfortable with doing something and they feel like they're inadequate, well, I mean, I'm not the only person. There's a lot of people who are inadequate at stuff, but God still uses those people to make his name famous and to honestly preach the gospel to yourself. Like, yeah, that I use that to preach the gospel to myself all the time. Like, I am not good enough at by what I can do. It's only Christ working through me. So it helps with the pride, because man, pilots are so prideful sometimes. They look down on people all the time.
Is that a pun? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's all I got to say.
Okay, very cool. Well, you guys, thank you so much. Again, this is Alex. He was a missionary to Papua. Gotta correct that. Yeah, and thank you guys for tuning in. Again, this is Matamata Des, which is Japanese for a long way to go. Please stay tuned. More videos to come. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next time.